They thought you would break. They thought betrayal would make you smaller. They thought it would make you desperate. They thought you would cry, beg, chase answers, and keep asking yourself what you did wrong. But what they never saw coming was this. Betrayal did not destroy you. It woke you up. When someone betrays you, they usually only think about the moment. They think about what they want, what feels good, what benefits them, what they can get away with. They do not think about the aftermath. They do not think about what happens when the person who loved them finally sees the truth clearly, and that person was you. You trusted them because you believed in what they showed you. You believed their words. You believed their promises. You believed the version of them that made you feel safe. And when they broke that trust, it did not just hurt your heart. It shook your entire reality. Because betrayal is not only about what they did, it is about what you thought was real. Suddenly, the conversations looked different. The memories felt different. The moments you once protected started to feel like warnings you ignored. And for a while, you blamed yourself. You wondered why you trusted so much. You wondered why you loved so openly. You wondered how you did not see it sooner. But here is what they did not expect. They did not expect that pain to turn into clarity. They did not expect your tears to become boundaries. They did not expect the person who once gave them chance after chance to finally reach a limit. They thought they were betraying someone who would always stay. They did not realize they were creating someone who would never return the same. They expected you to react. They expected emotion. They expected long messages. They expected questions, confrontation, maybe even one last attempt to make them understand how badly they hurt you. Because that is what people usually expect after betrayal. They expect the person they hurt to still be emotionally available. They expect pain to keep the connection alive. They expect your heartbreak to prove that they still have access to you. But what they did not expect was your silence. Not the weak kind of silence, not the silence of someone waiting to be chosen, not the silence of someone hoping they will notice the pain and come back to fix it. This was different. This was the silence of someone who finally understood. Someone who stopped trying to explain basic loyalty to a person who already knew what they were doing. Someone who realized that if they had to beg for honesty, then the relationship was already broken. At first, they may have felt relieved. No drama, no argument, no difficult conversation. No one holding them accountable in a way they had to face directly. They probably told themselves you were just taking space. They probably thought you would calm down. They probably believed that, sooner or later, you would return to the version of yourself that always tried to repair things. But this time, you did not come back the same. You stopped checking. You stopped reaching. You stopped giving them your energy just because they were used to having it. And slowly, the silence they thought was harmless started to feel heavy. Because silence is only easy when the other person does not matter. And you mattered. They expected your pain. They expected your anger. They expected your reaction. But they did not expect the moment you would stop reacting completely. At first, they thought your silence was temporary. They told themselves you just needed time. They told themselves you were hurt, but you would get over it. They told themselves this was just another emotional moment, another pause, another distance that would eventually close. Because in their mind, you had always come back before. You had always been the one who understood, the one who softened, the one who found a reason to forgive, even when they had not really earned it. You were the person who cared enough to keep the connection alive, even when they were careless with it, so they waited. They expected your name to appear on their phone again. They expected a message, a question, a sign that you were still emotionally attached. They expected you to open the door just enough for them to step back in like nothing had changed. But days passed, then more days, and something started to feel different. Your energy did not return. Your warmth did not come back. Your attention was no longer available on demand. The person who used to make space for them was no longer standing in the same place. That is when confusion begins. Because someone who takes you for granted never expects your absence to feel powerful. They expect it to feel empty for you, not for them. They expect you to suffer without them. They do not expect to be the one suddenly feeling the weight of what is missing, and slowly they start to notice. No one listens like you did. No one checks in with the same care. No one remembers the details. No one makes them feel understood without having to explain every piece of themselves. That is when the truth starts to reach them. You were not just available, you were valuable. And by the time they finally understand the difference, they are already standing on the other side of your boundary. Then comes the moment they try to replace you. At first they do it with confidence. They tell themselves there are other people, other conversations, other attention, other distractions. They convince themselves that what you gave was not that rare, that what you had together was not that deep, that losing you was not as serious as it feels. So they look for your energy somewhere else. They look for your patience in people who barely listen. They look for your loyalty in people who only show up when it is easy. They look for your warmth in connections that feel exciting for a moment, but empty when the moment passes. And that is when reality starts to become uncomfortable, because replacement only works when what was lost was ordinary. And you were not ordinary. They begin to notice the difference in small ways. A conversation that does not go as deep, a message that does not carry the same care, a person who laughs with them but does not really see them, someone who gives attention but not understanding, someone who is present but not invested. That is when they start comparing, not because they want to, because they cannot help it. They remember the way you paid attention, the way you knew when something was wrong, the way you gave them peace without making them explain why they needed it, the way you stayed consistent even when they gave you reasons not to. And suddenly, what they thought they could find anywhere starts to look impossible to replace. They thought losing you would only mean losing a person. They did not understand they were losing a feeling, a kind of safety, a kind of loyalty, a kind of love that does not show up twice just because they finally realize they need it. That is when regret begins. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, in every place where someone new fails to be you. This is when regret stops being just a thought. At first, regret is easy to ignore. They can distract themselves, they can stay busy, they can act like they made the right choice. They can tell themselves that everything happened for a reason, that you were too much, too sensitive, too serious, too emotional. But eventually, the distractions get quiet. And when everything gets quiet, the truth gets louder. There comes a moment when they are alone with what they did. No audience, no excuses, no one to impress, no version of the story that makes them look innocent. Just them, their choices, and the empty space where your presence used to be. That is when it starts to hit differently. They begin to understand that you were not asking for too much. You were asking for honesty. You were asking for consistency. You were asking for the same loyalty you had already been giving them. And that realization is uncomfortable, because it means they did not lose you because you were difficult. They lost you because they were careless. They lost you because they thought your patience had no limit. They lost you because they confused your forgiveness with permission. Now they have to sit with that. They have to remember the moments where they could have chosen differently, the times they could have told the truth, the times they could have protected what you were building instead of damaging it, the times they knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyway. That is the part they cannot escape, because missing you is painful, but knowing they are the reason you left is worse. They thought regret would be temporary. They did not expect it to become a mirror. Then comes the part they never prepared for. You start getting better. Not all at once, not in a way that looks dramatic from the outside. You do not wake up suddenly healed, suddenly unbothered, suddenly free from everything they did. But slowly, piece by piece, something in you begins to return, and this time it returns stronger. You start sleeping better. You start thinking clearer. You stop checking for signs. You stop waiting for messages. You stop replaying the same moments, trying to understand why someone would betray a person who only tried to love them honestly. You begin to understand that their betrayal was not a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of their character, and that changes everything. Because once you stop blaming yourself, you start rebuilding yourself. You take all the energy you used to pour into them and bring it back home. You start choosing peace over confusion, distance over disrespect, self-respect over emotional attachment. And people notice. They notice something different in your face, something calmer, something sharper, something that says you survived what was meant to break you, and you did not come back weaker. That is what they never saw coming. They expected damage. They expected bitterness. They expected you to carry what they did like a wound that would always keep you connected to them. But instead, you turned the pain into standards. You turned the heartbreak into discipline. You turned the betrayal into a reason to never abandon yourself again. They thought they were leaving you with loss. They did not realize they were handing you the beginning of your strongest version. This is where your boundaries become different. Before the betrayal, you may have explained too much. You may have forgiven too quickly. You may have tried to understand people before you understood what their behavior was doing to you. You gave chances because you had a good heart. You gave patience because you believed people could change. You gave access because you thought loyalty meant staying open, even when something inside you was getting tired. But after betrayal, something changes. You stop confusing love with unlimited tolerance. You stop calling it loyalty when you are the only one protecting the connection. You stop letting people hurt you just because you understand why they are broken. That is growth, and it makes you harder to manipulate. Now, when someone gives you inconsistency, you notice it. When someone gives you excuses instead of effort, you hear it. When someone wants access to your heart without responsibility for your peace, you feel it immediately. You are not colder, you are clearer, and that clarity becomes your protection. They never expected that. They thought you would stay the person who kept making room. They thought your love would always override your self-respect. They thought your heart was so soft that it would never learn how to close the door. But they were wrong. The same heart that loved deeply also learned deeply. And now your kindness has standards, your patience has limits. Your forgiveness no longer comes with automatic access. That is the version of you they never wanted to create, because this version cannot be played with. This version listens to actions. This version does not beg for honesty. This version walks away the moment peace starts costing too much. This is the part they did not see coming. They thought betrayal would make you weaker. They thought it would make you insecure. They thought it would make you question whether you were enough. And for a while, maybe it did. Maybe you did look in the mirror and wonder what they found so easy to betray. Maybe you did ask yourself why your loyalty was not enough. Maybe you did compare yourself to the people, choices, or temporary feelings they chose over you. But that season did not last forever, because eventually you stopped asking why you were not enough for them, and started asking why they were comfortable receiving so much from you while giving so little back. That question changed everything. It moved the focus away from your worth and placed it exactly where it belonged, on their character, their choices, their inability to value what was real while they had it. And once you saw that clearly, you stopped shrinking. You stopped trying to become easier to love for someone who did not know how to love deeply in the first place. You stopped measuring yourself by the opinion of someone who could not even handle your honesty, your depth, your loyalty. You began to rise in a way they could not control, calmly, quietly, without needing to prove anything. You started becoming someone they could still recognize, but no longer reach. Someone familiar enough to remind them of what they lost, but strong enough to never be pulled back into the same pattern. That is the kind of growth that unsettles people. Because they can explain your sadness, they can blame your anger, but they do not know what to do with your peace. They do not know what to do with the version of you who no longer needs them to understand, apologize, or come back. They betrayed someone who loved them. They created someone who finally chose themselves. Then comes the moment they realize you are not coming back. Not the old you. Not the version of you who would have listened to one more excuse. Not the version who would have accepted a half apology just to keep the peace. Not the version who would have opened the door again because your heart was still attached to the memory of who they pretended to be. That version is gone, and that is what they struggle to accept, because people who betray you often expect time to soften the damage. They think enough days will pass, emotions will cool down, and eventually they will be able to return with the right words. They think an apology can reopen a door they closed with their own choices. But they do not understand that healing changes access. Once you heal, you do not crave the same things. You do not miss the same version of them. You do not feel pulled toward the same chaos that used to feel familiar. You start seeing peace as more valuable than potential. And that is when their regret becomes powerless. Because now they may finally understand you. They may finally miss you. They may finally realize that you were not asking for too much. But realization after damage does not erase damage. They can miss you and still not deserve you. They can regret losing you and still not be safe for you. They can finally see your worth and still be too late to have access to it. That is the part that hurts them most. Not that you hate them, not that you are angry forever, but that you are calm. You can look back and understand what happened without wanting to return to it. You can remember them without needing them. You can accept the apology you may never receive and still keep the door closed. They thought losing you would be temporary. They did not expect your healing to make it permanent. And this is the final truth. They did not win. They may have betrayed you. They may have hurt you. They may have made you question yourself, your heart, your judgment, your ability to trust. For a while, it may have looked like they walked away with no consequences. But that was only because the real consequence had not reached them yet. The consequence was not your anger. It was your growth. The consequence was not you begging for answers. It was you becoming someone who no longer needed them. That is what they never saw coming. They thought betrayal would leave you stuck in the pain. They thought it would keep you attached to them. They thought it would make you softer toward their excuses, more desperate for closure, more willing to accept less just to feel chosen again. But instead, you became selective. You became calmer. You became harder to fool. You became the kind of person who can love deeply without abandoning themselves, the kind of person who can care and still walk away, the kind of person who knows that forgiveness does not always mean reconnection, and peace does not always require a conversation. They lost access to the version of you that loved without limits, and you found the version of yourself that finally has them. That is the twist. They betrayed you thinking they were taking something from you, but what they really did was push you into your own power. They forced you to see what you had been tolerating. They forced you to stop waiting for someone else to value what you already knew was valuable. So no, they did not break you. They revealed you. They became the reason you stopped shrinking, the reason you raised your standards, the reason you chose yourself with no apology. And one day they will look at you and understand the truth. They did not just lose you, they lost the only version of you that would have stayed. If you don't know what to say, when to stay quiet, or how to stop making things worse, the Marriage Restoration Playbook was made for you. It's a practical step-by-step guide for women who want to rebuild emotional safety and real connection in their marriage without the panic, pressure, or wrong words. Link is in the description and in the pinned comment.